folks, and welcome to the horror.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Erschen. This week we are ranking the Halloween franchise, and this is a tier ranking. I know I've done the traditional video Halloween ranking, but I thought it'd be fun to do a tier ranking. I had so much fun doing that previously. So I thought it'd be fun to do a franchise ranking with the tier list. So let's get into the tiers. So at the bottom we have white horse shit, which is just the bottom of the barrel, the absolute worst of the worst, absolute garbage. And there you have it. So the next level up is Busta, straight up Busta, uh, which is really, really bad. And then we have H2OK, which is the middle of the road, kind of mediocre, okay, halfway decent. Next up, we have Cuts Deep, which is very good. Then we have Bloodbath, which is really good. And then, of course, The Shape of Fear, which is the masterpiece, the 5-star classic, the absolute horror classic. All right, so let's get started, shall we? We are going to start with the 1978 film John Carpenter's Halloween, the original, the one that started it all, from 1978, directed by John Carpenter, and of course starring Jamie Lee Curtis, Donald Pleasance, and so on and so forth. Is there any question where I'm going to put this? You guys know me. Obviously, I'm going to put it in The Shape of Fear. An absolute masterpiece and my favorite horror film of all time. In my opinion, the greatest horror film of all time. And that's saying a lot, obviously, when I'm a horror nut. So this film is just incredibly, absolutely iconic. Every scene in this movie is iconic. Just the way it's shot, the beautiful directing by John Carpenter. I love all the characters: Laurie Strode, Dr. Loomis, Sheriff Brackett, Annie, Linda, everyone in this movie. I just absolutely love it. It's scary. The suspense is just, you can cut it with a knife, literally. um, yes, the slow burn tension. I mean, it's just unmatched. Obviously, the score, that goes without saying, which was actually created by John Carpenter. I mean, how amazing is that? The director also did the score to the film, and that's certainly saved them a lot of money. Man, what a way to cut costs. Just do the score yourself. You don't have to hire some composer. Um, and of course, he went on to do so many incredible, memorable scores for his own films. I mean, and certainly Halloween is one of the most well-known horror scores ever. Um, yeah, can't say enough about Dean Cundy's work, the director of photography, and such amazing shots and iconic images in this film. I love the use of Michael Myers, the villain, how mysterious he is, how he's just kind of in the background, but his presence, you just feel his presence even when he's not there. You can feel his presence, because of the way they use light and shadow and camera trickery. It's just incredible. Incredible performances all around, especially Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis is just phenomenal. I love the story. It's simple yet so very, very effective. A maniac escapes from, the mental institution, and he goes after this group of teenagers and stalks them and follows them and hunts them, and breaks into their house and terrorizes them. Yeah, it's incredible. Halloween from 1978 at the Shape of Fear. Now we have the second film, Halloween 2 from 1981, directed by Rick Rosenthal. I've said it before and I will say it again. Halloween 2 to me is the greatest horror sequel of all time. And because of that, Halloween 2 goes into the Shape of Fear, baby, right up there with the original classic. So we have the greatest horror film ever made, along with the greatest horror sequel ever made. Yes. To me, you just can't ask for anything more in a horror sequel. I mean, you got the returning characters, you got another great performance by Donna Pleasance as Dr. Loomis, you got Laurie Strode returning, Jamie Lee Curtis is great. Yes, I know a lot of the problems that people have with this film is one of the main things is, Lori is restricted to her bed in the hospital, Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, and she spends a good deal of the film in bed, kind of in and out of consciousness, and people have problem with that. The leading lady, but to me, it makes perfect sense. It makes absolute sense to me because of the hell that she went through in the first film. She was seriously injured by Michael. I mean, come on. She needs to recover. I mean, she's traumatized. Not only is she traumatized, but she's physically injured. So, yeah, I mean, it's the same night. It's not like 2 weeks later Michael comes after her. It's the same night. So, yeah. And yeah, Donald Pleasance is even more kind of crazy and determined to catch Michael and stop him. And I will say this, my favorite performance of Michael Myers of all time, Dick Warlock. To me, he is the best. Like, he's so scary. He is so creepy. Man, what an amazing portrayal. I love Dick Warlock as the shape Michael Myers. Just his presence, his looming presence, his uh, his gestures, to me he took what Nick Castle did in the original film and just took it to the next level. He took kind of the classic things that Nick Castle did, and you certainly have to give Nick Castle credit for setting the standard for all to follow in the footsteps of Michael Myers. But to me, Dick Warlock upped the ante in so many ways. Man, to me, he felt like everything that Dr. Loomis was talking about in the first one, pure evil, that's this Michael Myers to me embodies pure evil, 100%, there's something otherworldly about him. This is more than a man, this is what Dr. Loomis has been talking about. And he represents that beautifully. Um, And as far as Jamie Lee Curtis goes, I still think she has a great performance, and she's still Laurie Strode. She's still very believable. And at the end, when she finally does come to into consciousness, and realizes this maniac is after her again, and she's just horrified, and you feel it. And she still manages to get it together and escape this madman. And it's got one of the greatest climaxes in horror history, one of the greatest final acts in horror history. I mean, the tension, the suspense in that final act is just mind blowing. It's absolutely incredible and terrifying and pulse pounding. You got that pounding score, and I love the score in Halloween 2. I even like it better than the first one. Shh. I just feel like that more amplified version of the Halloween 2 theme is so brilliant. It's got that real gothic tone with the organ, kind of almost like evil church music kind of thing. I love that. Yes, so Halloween 2 and At the Shape of Fear. Next, we have one that's pretty controversial, and that is Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, the film that does not feature Michael Myers. Yes, this is kind of a solo one-shot story. Because the filmmakers thought, they did everything they needed to do in the first two movies. They told that story completely. And Michael Myers was killed in the fire at the end of Halloween too, um, and he burned to death. So time to move on to the next thing, and the plan was that this franchise was now going to be like an anthology series where there would be different solo stories based around the season of Halloween in each film. But that didn't quite work. People like, where the hell's Michael Myers? They probably shouldn't have made two films with Michael Myers if they weren't gonna stick with that. That's where the problem lies, in my opinion. Is they had two hugely successful films using that story and all those same characters and everything that to now all of a sudden switch it up was very jarring for people, and I think that was the problem. um at any rate, I do think, where am I going to put Halloween 3 Season of the Witch? I know it has become a cult classic over the years. I do enjoy the film, but I'm not as huge a fan as a lot of people are. I mean, I know at one point it was hated, but over the years I have come to enjoy it, and for what it was, a solo Halloween story, and I think it's got some great Halloween atmosphere for sure. Maybe even some of the best Halloween atmosphere of the season in the franchise. It's got that great John Carpenter and Alan Howarth score. Um, yeah, even though Michael Myers is not in it, still feels very much like a Halloween movie, with that score, with the tone, the direction. You even got a couple of the actors returning from the original film, even though they playing different characters like Nancy Keys. Um, yeah, and you got Jamie Lee Curtis so up at the loudspeaker throughout the town, doing the voiceovers. Yeah, and I do like Connell Cochran as the villain, played by Dan O'Herlihy. I think he's a great villain. Uh, and I think it's an interesting concept of this crazy toy maker who comes up with these masks that, when the children put it on and when they watch the commercial, their faces melt and they die. And they die, yeah. So his plan is basically to kill all the children in the world. That's crazy. Um, hmm. But to me, it's just an enjoyable little horror film. It's nothing more than that to me. I know some people feel like, oh, this is a classic. So, I don't feel the same way about it. I just feel like it's good. It's fun. It's a good time. I don't think it's anything deeper than that. So I'm gonna put it at H2OK. Okay. All right. Next up is Halloween 4, which, after Halloween 3 was kind of a bomb at the box office, they're like, oh, well, I think we need to go back to Michael Myers. We need to bring back Michael Myers. Hence, Halloween 4, the return of Michael Myers. So, yeah, very enjoyable film, and it was very successful. So, yeah, they made a good decision bringing back Michael Myers because that's what people wanted to see, apparently. And how do I feel about Halloween 4? I definitely really enjoy Halloween 4. Yeah, I'm going to put it at Bloodbath. Um, yeah, definitely a great return to form. It's great to see Michael Myers back, and great introduction of Danielle Harris as Jamie Lloyd. And I really came to love her character. Since Jamie Lee Curtis did not want to return, she was done with the franchise at that point. They came up kind of with this new story about with Jamie Lloyd, who was the daughter of Laurie Strode, and Laurie Strode apparently had died in a car crash or something. and Jamie Lloyd was adopted by the Carruthers. So Halloween 4, I feel, is a good solid follow up to Halloween 2. And I never liked the mask in Halloween 4. That's my biggest problem with this whole movie, probably, is that mask. Like, look at the poster right here. See? Does that look like the mask in the movie? I feel like that was such false advertising. It's my least favorite mask in the series, and probably my least favorite portrayal of Michael Myers. Yeah, I didn't really care much for George Wilbur in the role. I feel he felt to me very kind of generic, like a generic version of Michael Myers with the cheap mask, and he just kind of didn't bring anything new to the table. I felt like it felt like he was just doing the same thing that Nick Castle did and Dick Warlock did. But he didn't really bring much of his own flavor to it. He just felt kind of stiff the way he moved. But that's just my opinion. I know a lot of people love him, and I did enjoy his second performance, which I'll get into a little bit later. But yes, absolutely love Danielle Harris in the role of Jamie Lloyd. Great, great young actress. Amazing. And I also loved her foster sister, Rachel Carruthers, played by Ellie Cornell, who was just very much like a Laurie Strode type girl next door character. And she does that so well. And of course, you have Donald Pleasance returning as Dr. Loomis is just fantastic, giving one of his best performances in the series, I would say. So that's to me is what's great about Halloween 4 is the performances. That's what makes it good. I feel like the direction is okay, not that great. It's just kind of generic. I feel like this would be a generic slasher if it wasn't for the amazing performances of Donald Pleasance and Danielle Harris and Ellie Cornell. That's what makes it good, and because of that, I'm putting it at Bloodbath. It does have some pretty cool kills too. Uh, 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 okay, so let's get into fairly maligned. Whenever people do that ranking, they always seem to put this right at the bottom, and that is Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. Where am I going to put Halloween 5? Should it be at White Horse Shit? Should it be at Busta? Or should it just be at H2OK? Well, guess what? I'm putting it at Bloodbath, baby, right next to Halloween 4. Because to me, Halloween 4 and 5 go hand in hand. You got the returning characters, just like with Halloween 2 from Halloween 1. You got the returning characters, Jamie Lloyd, Rachel Carruthers, Donald Pleasance. I just feel like they go very well together, but a lot of people don't feel that way, of course. A lot of people have a lot of problems with it. And I'll be the first to admit it's certainly not a perfect movie. It does have some problems for sure. And I recognize the things that people have problem with. But I also feel like there's a lot of really cool stuff in Halloween 5 that people miss, I feel. One of the thing being Michael drives again. That was always to me such a cool thing about Michael Myers, especially in the original film, is that he drove. And it was kind of a mysterious thing. Like, how does he know how to drive? Maybe someone around here gave him lessons. um, but yeah, I thought it was cool to see him driving in. It's like a different way to stalk people, like creep around the car watching people. Very methodical in that aspect. That's one of the things to me that separates Michael from all the other slasher villains. Um, Not only that, is got some great suspenseful scenes, like especially the laundry chute scene where Jamie Lloyd is, crawling up the laundry chute, and Michael kind of, catches her, and he's stabbing. um, viciously at the laundry chute, and you see Jamie Lloyd inside trying to avoid the knife. Very intense, very suspenseful. And the scenes towards the end in the final act when Michael's in the car trying to run Jamie over and is like, "Ooh, wow, that's very intense." Um, and the scenes that take place in the barn, when Michael's in the barn, while the two people are making out, the two teenagers are making out, and he's kind of like watching them. It's very that scene's very suspenseful too. It's some great lighting and camera work. There's some scary, creepy stalking scenes, like when Michael's stalking Rachel in the house. He's kind of like hiding in the closet, watching her. It's very creepy. It's very unsettling. But yeah, I recognize some of the cheesy things, like Cookie Woman and and some of the things that people have a problem with. I don't have a problem with, like the fact that Jamie is mute in the film. I did not have a problem with that because to me, that she was so traumatized from the events of the end of Halloween 4 when kind of the evil was passed on to her when she touched Michael's hand in Halloween 4. And that's what caused her to grab the scissors and attack her foster mother, you know? So because of that, she went mute. She kind of emotionally shut down, and then they had to send her to the institution for child psychology. And to me, that made perfect sense. But a lot of people have a problem with that. It's that you know she's such a good actress. Why are they making her do that? Why are they making her be silent? But eventually she does get her voice back. Later on in the film. Another huge thing people have a problem with, obviously, is the fact that when Danielle Harris came back as Jamie Lloyd, she wasn't the killer like people expected her to be. Instead of Michael, or at least be Michael's sidekick or whatever. I feel like I don't know if that would have worked. Maybe it would have worked if she was like his sidekick or something. I don't know. It might be weird. This little girl running around killing people. Um, but yeah, another thing people have is, Rachel is killed off early on in the film. She's such a popular and beloved character, and they killed her off pretty early on in the film. But I felt that she had a nice little turn in the film. Yeah, maybe they could have used her a little more. Maybe she could have survived, but it's tough, to make it to. You're lucky enough to make it to the next film. Never mind, make it through another whole film. But yeah, I love Halloween 5. I wish people could see the good in it, instead of just trashing it. But anyway, this is my ranking. So Halloween 5 goes in Bloodbath. Next up, we have another controversial film in the series, and that is Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers. So yeah, where am I going to put The Curse of Michael Myers? Halloween 6. Very troubled production, of course. They had the producer's cut, which was kind of an alternate kind of director's cut of the film. And then you had the theatrical cut, which is very different, in a lot of ways. Now, when I went to see the film originally, I did not care for it. I'll be honest with you. I thought it was very convoluted. I thought the whole cult of Thorn thing was kind of ridiculous. Though, at least the way they handle it, I have no issue with the satanic cult thing in general, and adding that kind of interests me. But the way they handled it, the way they utilized the cult, to me was poorly handled. And it didn't even seem like Michael was even involved in it. like when Michael finally shows up, he just slaughters them all. It's like, you're not going to control me. I don't have nothing to do with you. And he just kills them all. We don't ever see him with the cult, interacting with the cult, which is one thing I liked about the producer's cut. The producer's cut, you do see Michael in there with the cult, getting ready to sacrifice Kara Strode there. But yeah, over the years, I have kind of come to enjoy Halloween 6. After seeing the producer's cut, which to me makes much more sense. So I definitely prefer the producer's cut. But at the same time, there's a lot of really cool kills. Michael's much more violent in the sixth film. And there's some nasty, like really cool kills, like when the dude gets his head blown off to bits. That's a great scene. Yeah, Michael is much more brutal this time around, and I do like George Wilbur's performance as Michael much more in this film than Halloween 4. Here I feel like he made up for Halloween 4, where I thought he was very stiff in Halloween 4. Here he was on point. I really liked him. Um, and the one thing that really bothers me about Halloween 6 is the acting. I feel like Halloween 6 has some of the worst acting in the franchise, like real B movie stuff. With that said, where am I gonna put him? So I say H2OK. I think it's a little bit more than okay. I actually do enjoy it. So I'm gonna put Halloween 6: The Curse of Michael Myers in cuts deep. Yeah. Yeah, I don't care for Paul Rudd. I know a lot of people like him in the film as Tommy Doyle. I didn't really care for him too much. I thought he was like I said, B movie acting, B campy B movie level acting. And that's my biggest problem with the film. And I will say, huge problem with the theatrical cut is there's not much Dr. Loomis in here, and this was Donald Pleasant's final performance in the Halloween franchise, and he's barely in it. He's just kind of off and off to the side. He's not much of a factor, but in the producer's cut, he is. So that's another huge reason why I prefer the producer's cut. But yeah, overall, it's a pretty enjoyable film with some cool kills, some great Halloween atmosphere as well. The film is shot very well, some great lighting, and tension and suspense. So yeah, I do enjoy Halloween 6. Now let's get to Halloween 7, which is Halloween H2O, which was kind of the big reboot of the franchise after The Curse of Michael Myers did not do well in the theaters. uh, it was not a success. So when you had 5 and 6, which both were not very well received and did not perform well at the box office, it's like, oh well, where do we go from here? And their idea was basically to do kind of a almost like a soft reboot in a way, but at the same time it was a requel before the word requel, was used in Scream 5 there. So yeah, this was a requel before there was requel. So where do we want to put Halloween H2O? So Halloween H2O saw the return of Jamie Lee Curtis, the triumphant return of Jamie Lee Curtis to the franchise, which was kind of a shocker. It was like, wow, she's coming back, and when that was huge. And there were talks that she was gonna have John Carpenter come back and direct the film, but unfortunately that never happened. But she did come back. Um, and yeah, it was a great story, and she has a great performance here. She's very traumatized, of course, by the events of the first two films. So yes, this film only follows the first two films. So yeah, and it's years later, and Laurie Strode has changed her name, um, and moved away to a prestigious college where she is like the head mistress of this prestigious college. And she has a son, and yeah, she's completely moved on with her life, but Not mentally. Mentally, she's still very much in a rut, and it's caused her to become like an alcoholic. She's very depressed, and she's still traumatized by the events of the first two films. Very much so. She has not escaped the shadow of Michael Myers by any means. Doesn't matter how much she tried to run away and change her name and erase her history, it still follows her, and so does Michael Myers, because Michael Myers does return 20 years later and shows up at the college looking for Laurie Strode. Definitely a solid film and a solid return to form. But one thing that's always bothered me about this is the fact that it ignores part four, five, and six, because I enjoy those films. It's like, damn. They don't acknowledge Jamie Lloyd being Laurie Strode's daughter or anything, nothing to do with 4, 5, and 6. They're completely retconned. And I hate when they do that. And they've done that few times in this in this series. Because of that, I'm putting H2O where it belongs in H2OK. I do enjoy the film, but there's a lot of things that bother me about it too. I do think that the ending is great, though. One of the best endings in the franchise, and very definitive end for Michael Myers. And I thought it should have stayed that way. I felt like that was the perfect end, the final battle between Michael and Laurie Strode, and it was so well done, very suspenseful, and that's easily the best part of the movie. Yeah, I think it's a solid film. But there's some silly stuff too, like with LL Cool J in there, and like I didn't really care too much for some of the side characters, not really very interesting. The only one who I found interesting was Laurie Strode. And the film isn't very scary. Seems kind of tame too compared to some of the other films. It's almost like dangerously close to PG-13 level. It's not particularly brutal, and it's not particularly suspenseful either, except for the final act. And it's interesting to see Michael in a different kind of setting too, outside of Haddonfield. That was kind of cool. I didn't particularly care for the portrayal of Michael Myers and the way he was presented either. He seemed kind of weak. Um, Laurie seems to pretty much have her way with him, easily. He doesn't seem particularly unstoppable either. He seems very human here, like just a bad guy down the street. Um, he didn't have that truly evil presence. That idea, that mystique that he was something more than a man. I just didn't get that vibe and that feel. But yeah, I certainly enjoy the film. I think it's a solid entry, but it's just that it's solid entry. It's just kind of okay. So next up we have Halloween Resurrection, which is the follow-up to Halloween H2O, and right off the bat, you might think I put it in Busta because Busta Rhymes is in the film, but I'm taking it even lower than that, and that is white horse shit. I hate this movie more than any film in the franchise. To me, I think it's just like an insult to the franchise. This cheap, quick cash grab in the name of the Halloween franchise. It's just soulless. It's just product. Uh, it it just seems to me that they were not even trying to make a good movie. They're just knocking out a quick buck to make a quick buck. And That's not right to me. I wanna see a good Halloween film, especially where H2O did kinda bring the franchise back to popularity, back to prominence, in the wake of the new Scream generation. And that was another thing about Halloween too that kinda bothered me too. That Halloween H2O kinda bothered me was that it's very Scream-esque, you know? There's so much Scream in there, feels like a Scream movie. Um, and that kinda carries over into Halloween Resurrection as well, but there's really next to nothing I like about this movie. The only thing I'd say is I think Brad Laurie is a pretty decent Michael Myers, and there's some pretty cool kills in it. But yeah, I can't stand Busta Rhymes. Like so many cringeworthy lines. Obviously trick or treat, motherfucker. I hate that. That drives me nuts. And he just manhandles Michael Myers with his kung fu, kicking him out the window, out of the house. Oh man. And there's even one scene that just drives me insane where Busta Rhymes is dressed as Michael Myers and he sees the real Michael Myers and starts yelling at him, thinking that he's somebody else. And he's just like yelling at him, giving him all kinds of crap. And Michael Myers just stands there and he just walks away. What the? He just walks away. Are you kidding me? Oh man. The only decent part is probably the beginning when because Laurie Strode does return. Jamie Lee Curtis does return to the film to kind of wrap up her storyline, and she does kind of have it out one last time with Michael Myers, but it happens very early on, and she bites it. She bites the dust. She's killed early on in the film, like 15 minutes into it. It's like, wow. And yeah, they definitely did her wrong. They did her dirty. Um, they gave her a very lackluster finale, and then once all that's over, and then they have this stupid, you know, reality TV series that they film inside the Myers house, which Busta Rhymes is the one who who was in charge of the production. And they just do stupid stuff. They jerry rig the house for stuff to pop out at kids, so it's a fixed reality TV series. Until, of course, the real Michael Myers shows up and foils all their plans and takes them all out one by one. Uh, but yeah, it just doesn't even work as a slasher. There's just something soulless about it. There's no suspense. There's no terror. There's no interesting characters whatsoever. They're so paper thin, these characters, that you just can't wait for them to die. You have no interest in them whatsoever. Even the main girl, the main character, the final girl, you don't give a damn about. That's a problem. And you don't care about Buster Rhymes. He's just an idiot. Just a terrible, terrible movie, and just to me, a disgrace to the franchise. And next up, we have Halloween from 2007. Yes, the remake from Rob Zombie. Where are we going to put this one? Oh my God. Who? I'm going to put it in H2 okay. I don't hate the film. It's very, very middle of the road for me. To me, it's equally 50-50. A lot I don't like, and a lot I do like. It's right in the middle. I hate the campy B movie over the top acting. I hate the over the top language and the filthy language they use. Um, yeah, I hate the whole redneck thing. Um, yeah, the acting is very campy. Like Danny Trejo's character in the sanitarium was so cheesy and over top. Yeah, but I did like how they did the kind of the whole prequel setup for showing Michael's childhood and how he evolved into the madman that we know and love today. The boogeyman, how he became the boogeyman. Yeah, I thought that part of it was interesting, and it was pretty believable too. It was done almost like he was a real person. Yeah, they tried to inject some of the real life serial killer type stuff into his character, making him out to be like a Ted Bundy type or something like that, like a real life serial killer, which was interesting. So I like that part of it. I like Tyler Mane, who plays the adult Michael Myers, and he's brutal, vicious. And this movie has some really sick kills. Michael is just so brutal. He's huge. He's like a monster. He's this hulking beast of a man. And I love the look of the mask is pretty cool, even though he does look kind of like Leatherface a little bit. Like the mask almost looks like it's stitched together like Leatherface. Which I'm sure that was on purpose from Rob Zombie, him being such a huge fan of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Um, yeah, to me, it's middle of the road. It's exactly 50-50 to me. I appreciate that he was trying to inject something a little bit different in there with the Shawn Michaels childhood, and I thought that was interesting. I like the stuff with young Michael and Dr. Loomis in Smith Grove Sanitarium, some of the discussions they were having, and you see him kind of slowly shut down mentally, and eventually he just completely shuts down and doesn't and becomes a mute, never talks again. And I thought that was interesting. Get to see him escape from the sanitarium and take up, basically have a whole massacre in the sanitarium on his way out when he escapes. I thought that was cool, and then the f- the second act of the film becomes kind of a quick remake of the original Halloween, pretty much a straight up remake with a lot of the same dialogue, and we see Dr. Loomis come into it, and he's has a lot of the same dialogue, and yeah, it's pretty solid, but not great. I remember when they first announced that it was happening, I was like so against it. I even like campaigned against it. I went online on the Halloween sites, saying stop this movie from being made. To me, it was like desecrating the original classic. I feel like Halloween should never be remade. Because I didn't want it to be just another crappy remake like the Nightmare on Elm Street one or uh and that's kind of what it is. It's not great. It's just like another remake. It's okay. It's H2 okay. All right, so next we have Rob Zombie's follow-up to the remake, which was Halloween 2. Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 is what I call it because I don't want it to get confused with the Great Halloween 2 from 1981. This is Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Where am I going to put this? I'm going to put it in white horse shit where it belongs. Because I hate the white horse in the film. Deborah Myers with, you know, Rob Zombie always has to put his wife in there. Yeah, even when she died in the first movie, she's got to come back as a ghost in this one. With the whole weird white horse thing and the trippy dream sequences. Um, There are a few things I like about the film. I will say the opening is really cool with seeing Michael stalk Laurie in the hospital, reminiscent of Halloween 2, and and when he chases her out into the parking lot and it's pouring rain out and it's got such great lighting in that scene, and that was very intense. When she goes out to the security booth and like smashes it in with an axe. It's intense, man. I like that. Um, but the film's just a complete mess. It's just all over the place. There's all these random scenes of random characters that have no business being in the film, that just don't matter. They're just there to be fodder for Michael. And Michael doesn't even wear a mask for most of the film. Even when he does wear the mask, it's almost like completely hanging off his face. You see his face through it, and half the time he just doesn't wear it. You just see, just looks like a dude with long hair and a long bushy beard. It's definitely some brutal kills, that's for sure. This is really, really violent. And you got these weird, trippy dream sequences with young Michael and Deborah, and it seems like Michael is trying to reach Lori and bring her to the family with the mother and young Michael, and they could go off and be one happily killer family together. That's kind of Michael's plan, I guess. That's why you see these weird, like, we see like inside Michael's consciousness almost. But yeah, I really didn't like it almost looks like a trippy music video. It's more than a movie. It's overly long and drawn out and dragged out. I don't really care for Rob Zombie's direction in the film. It's just so choppy with the editing, and definitely has some good kills. And I will say I do like Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor Compton much more in this than I did in the first film. Maybe, I changed my mind. Maybe I'm gonna put it at Busta because I do like Scout Taylor Compton in this film. I could feel the trauma in her voice, in her mannerisms. She's obviously heartbroken and distraught and depressed, and you can feel it. And man, when she finds out that Michael is actually her brother, I mean, you really feel it. It's like very intense. And she goes to therapy. She's fighting with her best friend, played by Danielle Harris, Annie, and they have a great, kind of chemistry, even though they're fighting. I love, I love their performance. And yeah, it was definitely heartbreaking when she does get killed, and the father, Brad Dourif plays Sheriff Brackett. When she finds her body there, he just really loses it, and it feels very kind of authentic. So yeah, it's not complete garbage, but it is pretty much garbage. So I'm putting Halloween 2 by Rob Zombie in Busta. All right, next up, we're left with the David Gordon Green trilogy. Where are we going to put that? Now, when we start that with Halloween 2018, which was kind of yet another reboot, requel kind of thing, where the last Rob Zombie film was not successful at all. It was kind of a bomb, so they decided to start from scratch again and make a new trilogy, directed by David Gordon Green, which kind of brought Michael Myers back to the original style shape. And once again, they retcon all the movies, every movie except part one. So it doesn't even follow two, it only follows the original from 1978. And that is Halloween 2018. And we did see Jamie Lee Curtis come back into the franchise once again. and her character is similar to that of her character in H2O. Laurie Strode, once again, she's traumatized. Only this time, it's a little more extreme. She's almost to the point where she's like Sarah Connor, heavily armed, heavily dangerous, trained gunwoman. And she's like this kind of survivalist. She's got an underground bunker beneath her house, like this army bunker set up with all the guns and knives and ammo and everything. Uh, yeah, set up just in case Michael returns, which she feels could happen someday, and she's been preparing for that for 40 years now. So that's the basic premise of the movie. She's been preparing all this time. She's completely obsessed with the fact that what if Michael returns someday and comes back for me again? I want to be ready. And she does the same thing to her daughter. She tries to get her daughter prepared too, as well. And that kind of puts a huge strain on her relationship with Karen, played by Judy Greer in the film. And obviously, guess what happens? Michael escapes from the sanitarium 40 years later. Big surprise. Now I will say out of the three, this seems to be the one that gets the most love out of the three, where the other two are kind of polarizing to a lot of people. Now to me personally, this one is kind of polarizing to me personally. Um, because it's not my favorite of the three. There are definitely some things I like about it, especially the portrayal of Michael Myers by James Jude Courtney. And that's what's great. The portrayal of Michael is the best thing about 2018. And Jamie Lee Curtis as well. She has a fantastic performance. It's great to see her back, and she does a fantastic job in this film. Probably maybe her best performance, one of the best performances of her career, no doubt. Let's see, where do I want to put this? Oh man, I'll put it at cuts deep, but just barely. It's almost at H2OK, but I'm gonna give it cuts deep just because it's a triumphant return for Michael Myers. I mean, when he escapes from the sanitarium and goes to that gas station, and you know it's great. When he puts the mask back on, when he pulls the mask out of the trunk of the car and puts it on, that's like my favorite scene in the trilogy. It's so cool. It's like Michael's back, yes. It's just something about that scene. It just works so well. And Michael is portrayed so well by James Jude Courtney. I think he's in one of the best shapes of the series, no doubt about it. He gets it. He gets it. He takes everything that Nick Castle did in the original film, that Dick Warlock did in part two, all the best aspects of Michael Myers all in one. He gets it, and he's great. I love the mask; it looks awesome. And he has the character down to a T, and it just feels like the classic style of Michael Myers from the original is back, and that's what's so great. Uh, the story, not so much. It's all right. I like the relationship between Laurie and her granddaughter, as well as the strained relationship between her and her daughter. Um, yeah, really good stuff. Their whole family dynamic is very interesting. And the acting is real solid too. Some of the other side characters I could do without, that's for sure. Like the sheriff, the new sheriff is like completely useless. and I don't like the comedy in the film. And anytime they use comedy in the film, it's just cringeworthy. It's bad. And I guess you gotta blame Danny McBride for that, because he's the guy working on the film that's done so many comedies. So I imagine he's the one that injected the comedy into the film, and it just falls flat, doesn't work. But the direction by David Gordon Green certainly elevates the film. I think he does a great job. He's got a great style. I still feel he hasn't gotten quite the right film yet, but I think he will someday. And yeah, he's not such a good writer, though. Now, he wasn't the chief writer, but he was one of the writers, too. I think him and Danny McBride. Yeah. So that's the same problem I have with Rob Zombie. Is I feel that he's just a good director and shouldn't write, because the dialogue can be really cringeworthy at times. Um, yeah, the writing, but the direction is great. It's got some of that great lighting and great suspense as well. There's some great suspenseful scenes, especially that one shot take where Michael goes into the Elrod house and hammers the lady, and it's all done in like one continuous shot, and it's really, really cool. That's an excellent scene. Yeah, Halloween 2018 goes in cuts deep, I think. Just barely, but yeah. Next up, Halloween Kills in a Bloodbath. Yeah, I love the look of the mask, where he gets burned, because that's what happens at the end of Halloween 2018. He gets caught in the underground bunker that Laurie Strode has in the house, and they catch him in there and set the place on fire, set the house on fire, and that's how Halloween Kills starts. It starts with Michael coming out of the burned house. The police come in, and he just attacks the police and takes them out. He takes out the whole damn fire department. And it's amazing. One of my favorite shots of the franchise is when he first comes out of the house on fire and he's standing there. Really awesome shot. And what I love about this film is it's just a straight up balls to the wall slasher. I mean, Michael Myers is absolutely brutal in this film. He's never been more brutal. I mean, he's just vicious. He just eviscerates people in this movie, and it's awesome. Some of the best, most awesome kills, some great practical effects and gore. I love it. But is it a perfect film? Not even close. I mean, story wise, it's not great. So I get what people have issues with in this film, especially the story with, where that guy comes to the hospital, the escape mental patient from the first film in 2018, and everybody mistakes him for Michael Myers. They think because he's this escape lunatic, that he must be Michael Myers, and everybody goes after him, and it's like almost a mob, and that's what happens in the film. It's about mob mentality and what can go wrong when you get angry civilians together who, a lot of them, their families have victims of Michael Myers. Their sons or daughters were victims of Michael Myers, so they all gather together. They feel like the police aren't doing anything, so they take the law into their own hands and create kind of a lynch mob to take down Michael Myers. But yeah, it's poorly handled. I'm not gonna lie. But I do like Anthony Michael Hall, and the role of Tommy Doyle is pretty cool, and I like seeing a lot of the old actors from the first film come back. You got Marion Chambers returning. Um, yeah, you got Tommy Doyle returning, and you got Kyle Richards returning from the original film, who plays Lindsay Wallace. So it's really cool to see those characters come back. Although, and oh yeah, I forgot Sheriff Lee Brackett comes back. How cool is that? Yeah, so it's great to see the legacy characters come back, although they kind of just come back to get killed, you know. Wish they kind of used them better, but it's still great to see them. And I really enjoyed Kyle Richards' performance. I thought they could have did a lot more with her character going into the next film, Halloween Ends. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, I'm putting Halloween Kills at Bloodbath because the film is an absolute bloodbath. Also, got to give a shout out to them for bringing Dr. Loomis back for that 78 flashback scene. I really enjoyed that. Really well done how they did that scene and, kind of used that classic set design that they made it look just like the original 1978 film. And you see the police use wearing the old 1970s uniforms and driving the 70s cars, and they just made it look like John Carpenter's Halloween from 1978. So I love that. Next up, Halloween Ends, the final film in the franchise so far. Anyway, we don't know what the future holds, but uh, yeah, the last film, at least in David Gordon Green's trilogy. And this was said to be the final battle between Laurie and Michael Myers. That's how it was billed. That's what it was sold as. That's what all the commercials promised us. And is that what we got? Not exactly. not not so much. What we got is a whole new story with this guy Corey Cunningham. Um, yeah, who is a babysitter, and he goes to babysit this kid. And you know, when the parents go off, everything seems to be fine. He seems to be bonding with the kid. But something happens where the kid tries to mess with him and play a trick on him, and he locks him in this room, and apparently he has issues being locked in a room or locked in the dark. I don't know. And he freaks out and he starts to like, "You little shit, let me out of here!" And he smashes the door. And when he does that, when he finally breaks the door down, he knocks the kid right over because the kid's right behind the door, and the kid falls off the ledge and falls to the floor from the second floor and dies. And that's what the story is about. It's like his you know his trauma, and he turns out falling for Laurie's granddaughter Allison. So this troubled kid, meets up with Allison, and they get into a relationship. He becomes her boyfriend, and it causes all sorts of problems between Karen, the mother, and of course the grandmother, Laurie Strode. Um, which is interesting, and I am not opposed to the fact that they did something completely different in this movie. They went a whole different direction. And Michael Myers is just a side character, basically. We see very little of him in this movie. And we don't see a whole hell of a lot of Jamie Lee Curtis either. So she's kind of put off to the side in a way. So it's very interesting. It's very different. So it's like Halloween 3 Season of the Witch in that aspect, is this is kind of almost like a one-shot story within the Halloween franchise. Even though Michael Myers is in it, he is not the central focus, and neither is Laurie Strode. The central focus is a whole new character that just got introduced in this movie that's never been part of the franchise. Like he wasn't even in 2018 or Halloween Kills. They just introduced this new character and focused the movie on that character. And it's like almost like wow, what the hell, like, and the problem with that I have is this is billed as Halloween Ends. This is supposed to be the final battle between. This is supposed to be like the final film in the franchise, almost. The final last battle ever between Laurie and Michael. That's what they promised of, and they did not really deliver on that. I mean, it does happen, but when it does, it's very quick and it wraps up pretty quickly, and it's not as exciting as you might think it could be. It was pretty brutal, but I will say that Corey is a pretty interesting character, but I feel like all the setup they did to build up his character just kind of goes out the window at the end when they just unceremoniously kill him off. Um, Michael comes back to terrorize Laurie again, and they have their final battle, and then that's it. You know. There is a lot of things I like about the film, but again, it's almost like 50-50. A lot of things I like, a lot of things I don't like. And I will say it features one of the most cringeworthy scenes in the franchise. That's when Michael, who is living in a cave all this time for 4 years, he's been living in a cave, trying to recuperate from his injuries that he received in Halloween Kills at the end, where the town caught up with him at the end and they beat the living crap out of him and shot him and he was seriously, seriously injured. And you see a very, very vulnerable Michael Myers, and it's very jarring. It's so weird to see him that vulnerable and weak and broken down, and he's just like this broken down old man. He's not the Michael Myers that we know, especially even in the last film. He was like Super Michael, this super slasher killer that was just unstoppable. Here, he's just a man, basically, just an old man. This 65 something year old man, just broken, beaten down hermit living in a cave. Um, and one thing I thought was pretty interesting was when anyway, let me get back to what my point was. The cringeworthy scene is when Corey meets up with Michael and finds where he is, and they kind of bond a little bit. And it's almost like Michael's gonna take Corey under his wing and teach him the ways because Corey's kind of making a descent down the dark path, down to the dark side, basically. And when he meets up Michael, he's like, "Oh, well, maybe I'll learn from Michael and be a killer like Michael and take on the mantle of Michael Myers because Michael is too weak to do so." But at one point, Corey does lure this guy into the cave for Michael to kill, and once Michael stabs the guy, it's like, oh, Michael's got his groove back, and he hulks up and he's like, "Ugh," when he gets his first taste of blood, he's like, oh, he hulks up almost like Hulk Hogan in 1987. It's horrible. It's so bad. Oh my God. It's cringe as hell. But overall, it's a decent film. So I'm gonna put it in H2 okay. It's middle of the road for me once again. I feel like it's a very jarring film. It's kind of a mess. Um, yeah, there's certain things I enjoy about it. Once again, the direction of David Gordon Green is great. The film looks great. It does have some solid suspense in there. And I kind of like the aspect of Corey being almost like Michael's sidekick, like Michael is his mentor, and he follows him on a little killing spree there. And that's kind of interesting. They didn't really do a whole lot with it. It's just kind of one scene, but I thought that was pretty cool. But I didn't like when Corey actually takes on the mantle of Michael and takes the mask from Michael and like overpowers him and wrestles him to the ground and takes his mask. It's like, oh my god. I just don't think anybody should ever be taking on the mantle of Michael Myers. There's only one shape. There's only one boogeyman. There is only one Michael Myers. I accept no imitations. But I thought it was cool, when he had the clown mask. That was cool and it looked cool. That could have worked. But anyway, there's a lot of problems with Halloween Ends, I think, but there's some good stuff too. It's not a complete piece of garbage. So that's why I put it at H2OK. And that's it, guys. That's it. That is the Halloween franchise tier ranking. Thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Erschen on the Horror Corner. That was a lot of fun, guys. So tune in and stay scared. Peace out, guys. Have a great one.